The neon sign of the Blue Comet Diner was buzzing, a low-voltage flicker of pale blue against the black. Driving rain. It was, 2 in the morning, maybe later, in the Ironbound. The windows were sweating on the inside, fogging up the view of the wet streets, which was fine by me. There was nothing out there to see but semis heading for the port and ghosts. My name is Mara Quintero, I'm 24, and I felt about 104. I was 12 hours into a double shift that I hadn't asked for, and my hands had that familiar, jittery tremor. It wasn't fear, it was cheap. Burnt coffee, and way too much of it. 6 cups. 7 I'd lost count. Sleep was a rumor I'd heard about in another life. My feet felt like wet cement blocks inside my worn-out sneakers. The diner was packed, which was weird for a Tuesday. It was a loud, clattering symphony of port drivers arguing over shipping lanes, mechanics from the local garages smelling of grease and cigarettes, and, sitting quietly in booth 4, the funeral party. That's what I called them. 3 guys in dark suits that cost more than my entire education, which, to be fair, had stalled out after 2 semesters at community college. They'd been there since midnight, drinking black coffee, saying nothing, just watching. Sal, my boss, had pointed them out. VIPs, Mara, don't screw it up. I wouldn't have had to deal with them at all. But Maria, my shift partner, had called in sick again. That was the 3rd time this month. Sick meant her new biker boyfriend was in town. Sal, who looked like a stressed-out walrus, had slammed the phone down and pointed a greasy spatula at me. Mara, you're taking the whole floor, and you will be nice to booth 4. I'm always nice, I muttered, grabbing the pot. Yeah, well, be nicer. I was pouring a refill for a trucker arguing about the Giants when the bell above the door jingled. A blast of cold, wet air silenced half the conversations in the room. 2 men stepped inside. The first one was built like an industrial refrigerator. His eyes were dark and quick, scanning the room like he was checking for structural weaknesses or exits. He was the bodyguard. The man behind him was the reason. He was tall, and the rain dripped from the shoulders of a long, dark coat that probably cost more than my car. He didn't look flustered or wet. He just looked calm, like the storm had politely waited for him to pass. He moved with a stillness that sucked the air out of the room. He spotted the one decent booth left, the corner one by the window that wasn't rattling from the wind. Sal always kept a reserved sign on it, which was a joke. Reserved for who? The Pope. The man started toward it. The caffeine and the exhaustion and the sheer length of the day all collided in my brain. Before my filter could kick in, the words just fell out of my mouth. Dude, that spot's taken. Silence. The grill stopped sizzling. The truckers stopped arguing. Even the funeral party in booth 4 looked up. The refrigerator tensed, his gaze snapping to me. It wasn't an angry look. It was worse. It was an assessment, like he was calculating the precise amount of force needed to snap my spine. A chill, completely separate from the rain, ran right up my back. The man in the coat just stopped. He turned his head slowly. He didn't scowl. He didn't grimace. He just raised one perfect eyebrow, a tiny smile. The ghost of one touched the corner of his mouth but died before it could reach his eyes. It was the kind of smile that made you want to apologize for being born. Before I could backpedal, before I could say sir or mister or I'm so sorry, I'm an idiot, a gravelly voice cut through the quiet from the counter. Hey, Mara, sweet thing. Oh, God, Vince Harridan. Harridan was a port contractor, a big, beefy guy who always wore a stained safety vest and smelled like cheap cigars and diesel. He was our worst customer and our most reliable. Leave the man alone, Harridan barked, grinning with yellow teeth. Why don't you come over here and show me what's on the real menu? He slid a damp $20 bill across the formica, his eyes dropping below my waist. I felt my face heat up. I hated this part. I hated him. But rent was due, and my little brother, Eli, needed his meds. You learn to swallow your pride. You learn to smile. But the new guy, the man in the coat, didn't even look at Harridan. He just said one word, so quiet it was barely a whisper. but it cut through the diner hum like a razor. "Don't?" Harridan laughed. "Don't what? Pal, I'm just talking to the waitress." He reached out as I passed with the coffee pot, his thick fingers aiming for my wrist. "Come on, Mommy. Just a little smile for Vinny." That was it. I was done. Done with the shift, done with the rain, done with being called Mommy. I slammed the glass pot down on the warmer, the coffee sloshing. I grabbed a sticky, plastic-coated menu from the stack. As Harridan's hand lunged, I slapped the menu down, covering his hand and pinning it to the counter with a thwack that echoed in the sudden quiet. "My name is Mara," I said. My voice was low, but for the first time all night, it wasn't shaking. Not sweet thing, not Mommy, and the menu, I tapped the plastic, is right here. The diner was a tomb. Harridan's face went from a leer to a dark, blotchy purple. He started to stand up, his stool scraping loudly on the linoleum. "Why, you little—" I hadn't even seen the man in the coat move. He was just there, standing between me and the counter. He didn't touch Harridan, he didn't raise his voice. He reached into the metal napkin dispenser, pulled out a single, thin paper napkin, and let it flutter down onto the counter, right next to Harridan's trapped hand. It looked like nothing, just a piece of paper. But then I saw it. Embossed in the corner was a small, elegant, unmistakable shape, an anchor. The Caravello anchor. My stomach didn't just drop, it evaporated. This wasn't the Ironbound. This was Port Newark. And the Caravellos weren't just VIPs. They were the port. They owned the shipping lines. They ran the unions. They controlled every container that moved from here to Elizabeth. They probably owned this diner, this block, and the air I was breathing. Harridan saw the anchor. The purple drained from his face, leaving it a sick, pasty white. "Leave," the man in the coat said. His voice was still quiet, polite even. "Now." Harridan didn't speak. He didn't argue. He ripped his hand out from under the menu so fast he knocked over the salt shaker. He grabbed his coat, fumbled with his keys, and practically ran out the door, letting the rain soak him. The refrigerator, the bodyguard held the door open for him, a gesture of mock courtesy that was terrifying. I watched Harridan stumble into the night. His hands, I noticed, were shaking. The diner exhaled, the grill sizzled, the truckers went back to their food, but they were different. They all glanced toward the man in the coat, and one by one, they gave a short, slow nod. A law had been broken, a judgment had been passed, the natural order was restored. I was trembling again, the caffeine rush replaced by pure adrenaline. I picked up the coffee pot, my knuckles white. The man, the Caravello, was sitting in Sal's reserved booth, of course. The bodyguard stood by the jukebox, not watching the music, just watching the room. I walked over, my feet on autopilot. "What can I get you?" My voice sounded thin. He looked up at me. His eyes were dark, not black, but a deep, unreadable gray, like the ocean under a storm. "Americano," he said. His voice was smooth, with a faint gravel, like old whiskey over ice. "Black." I poured it. The steam rose between us. The caffeine was still singing in my veins, making me stupid, making me brave. "Here you go," I said, sliding the cup onto the saucer. "Pretty dramatic entrance. You just scared off my worst tipper, dude." I froze. I'd done it again. Dude. The bodyguard stiffened. The Caravello boss didn't react. He just lifted the cup, not to drink, but to breathe in the steam. He closed his eyes for just a second, and that ghost of a smile returned. "Thank you," he said. He stayed for exactly 10 minutes. He drank the Americano in slow, deliberate sips. He didn't speak. The bodyguard didn't move. The funeral party in booth 4 paid their bill in cash, too much of it, and left. Finally, he signaled for the check. I printed the slip, $4.50, and dropped it on his table. He pulled out a wallet and laid a credit card on the tray. It was heavy, matte black, with no name, just a chip. I ran it. Approved. Of course it was. I brought the receipt back. He signed his name, an illegible, powerful slash of ink, and added the tip. He slid the tray back toward me. the merchant copy on top. "Good night," he said. He stood, shrugged his coat straight, and walked out. The bodyguard followed. The bell jingled. They were gone. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely pick up the tray. I looked at the receipt. The total was $4.50. The tip he'd written in was I checked it twice. It was enough to cover my rent for 1 entire month. I felt dizzy. I flipped the receipt over to grab the customer copy. He had scribbled something on the line below the total. "Thanks for being direct." I was staring at the number, trying to make my brain understand. When the bell jingled again, my head snapped up. It was the bodyguard, the refrigerator. He'd stepped back inside, letting the door close softly behind him. He walked right up to me. I took a step back, hitting the counter. He leaned in, his voice a low, confidential rumble. "My boss," he said. "He hates being called dude." I stopped breathing. My heart hammered against my ribs. And then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was all teeth. "Have a good night, Mara." He didn't sound angry. He sounded cold. He turned and left, for real this time. It took me a full minute to move. I finally walked over to the booth to bust the table. My legs felt like jelly. Under the saucer, where his cup had been, was a blue Comet matchbook. He hadn't been smoking. I opened it. Inside, written in the same powerful dark ink as his signature, was an address, a garage, down by the Passaic River. I worked until the end of my shift, my mind a million miles away, the weight of that tip in my apron pocket feeling like a block of lead. The rain finally stopped just as the sky was turning from black to a sick, bruised gray. It was 5:45 in the morning. I pushed open the diner's glass door, the smell of grease and old coffee clinging to me. I just wanted to go home, to see Eli, to sleep for a week. A gray sedan was idling at the curb, not flashy, but sleek and expensive, the kind of car that purrs instead of rumbles. It didn't belong here. As I walked past, the back window slid down with a silent hum. A different man was inside, older, wearing a driver's cap. His face was professional, unreadable. "Miss Mara?" he asked. His voice was polite, respectful. I stopped. "Yeah." "The boss would like to offer his apologies for last night," the driver said, his eyes on the rearview mirror, "and a proposition." I stood on the wet sidewalk, the gray light of 5:45 a.m., making the world look like an old photograph. The driver's words hung in the air. A proposition. My first instinct, the one that had kept me alive and mostly out of trouble in Newark, was to run, to say no thanks and walk the 12 blocks home to my apartment, bolt the door, and sleep until this whole night felt like a caffeine-induced nightmare. But I thought of the tip in my apron. I thought of the dread I felt every time the mail came, wondering if it was another bill from the community clinic. "Where?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "The address on the matchbook," the driver said, nodding to the small piece of cardboard I was clutching in my fist. "He's waiting. I'm just the transport." I looked at the car. It was clean. I looked at the driver. He looked bored. I was so tired I couldn't feel my feet. "Fine," I said, and pulled the door open. "But if this takes more than 20 minutes, I'm walking." The drive was short, silent, and smooth. The sedan handled the potholed streets of the Ironbound like they weren't even there. The driver turned on the radio, low, just a murmur of an all-news station. "Escalating concerns at Port Newark," a serious voice said. "A spokesperson for the MPAI, that's the Metro Port Authority Investigations, is calling for calm, but sources inside the FFIU are suggesting—" The driver hit a button, and the car filled with the sterile sound of classical music. FFIU, MPAI, alphabet soup. It sounded official and distant, like a problem for men in suits, not waitresses in scuffed sneakers. We pulled up to the address. It was an old brick garage, the kind that used to service delivery trucks, tucked away on a dead-end street overlooking the filthy Passaic River. The driver didn't get out, he just clicked the door lock. I was on my own. I stepped out, The air smelled of low tide and rust. The big bay door was rolled up about 3 feet. I ducked under it and into the shadows. It wasn't a garage. Not really. There wasn't a single grease stain on the polished concrete floor. It was more like an office that was pretending to be a garage. Clean metal shelves lined one wall, neatly stacked with shipping supplies, box cutters, tape guns, stacks of customs forms. A single, powerful light hung over a heavy steel table in the center. And he was there. The man from the diner, Lucien Caravello. He wasn't wearing the heavy, rain-soaked coat. He was in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up to his forearms. He looked less like a specter and more like a very tired, very intense CEO who'd been up all night working on a merger. The refrigerator, the bodyguard from last night, stood by the door. His name, I'd learn later, was Silas. Miss Quintero, Mara. Lucien Caravello didn't stand. He just watched me walk into the light. Thank you for coming. Coffee. He motioned to a high-end espresso machine on a cart that was worth more than my car. I've had enough coffee, I said. My shift ended an hour ago. You have 20 minutes. What is this proposition? He gave me that same half-smile. Direct. I appreciate that. He steepled his fingers, his gray eyes pinning me in place. You know who I am. It wasn't a question. I saw the anchor. I said, Caravello. My family has interests in the port, he said. A neat, clean way of putting it. Legitimate interests. Logistics, shipping, storage. But with any business that large, there are discrepancies, leaks, paperwork gets lost, numbers get transposed, accidents happen. He pushed a stack of papers across the table. They were manifests, bills of lading, thick bundles of them. They looked exactly like the ones the port drivers left stained with coffee rings on the counter at the diner. I have an internal auditing problem, he continued. I believe someone inside my own organization is moving numbers around, making certain containers disappear from one manifest and reappear on another. Sounds like a problem for your accountants, I said, glancing at Silas by the door. Or your bodyguard. My accountants follow the numbers I give them. Lucien said, and Silas, he glanced at the big man, solves problems I already understand. This is a problem I don't understand yet. I'm missing the source. I'm missing the how. Okay, I said, folding my arms. I'll bite. Why me? I'm a waitress. I pour coffee and clean up ketchup. You're more than that, he said, and the way he said it made my skin prickle. You've worked at the Blue Comet for 3 years. You're not related to anyone at the port. You're not dating a longshoreman. You're not in debt to any of the local sharks. You are, for lack of a better word, clean. You're an outsider, but you're inside the bubble. Every driver, dispatcher, and mechanic in the Ironbound eats at your counter. They talk. You listen. You just don't know what you're hearing. He was right. I heard everything. I heard about which foreman was skimming. I heard which driver was running a side hustle. I just never cared. It wasn't my world. And, he added, you don't flinch. You stood up to Vince Harridan. Not many people do that. So, what's the job? I asked. You want me to spy on my customers? No, he said sharply. I want you to be a drop box, a pair of neutral eyes. My people, some of them are being watched, but you're just the waitress. No one watches you. He paused. Men from my logistics company will stop by the diner. They will forget their route invoices. You will collect them. You will compare the container numbers on those invoices to a list I give you. If a number doesn't match, you send me a text. That's it. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. I need to be very clear. You will not touch anything illegal. You will not handle packages or contraband or weapons. You are a data entry clerk. Mara, a ghost. You're checking numbers on a piece of paper. It sounded too simple and too dangerous. And in return, this was the part I was dreading, the hook. In return, he said, a few things. First, you will never, ever have to deal with Vince Harridan or anyone like him again. That is guaranteed. I swallowed. That alone was tempting. Second, he said, pulling a folded piece of paper from his shirt pocket. He slid it across the table. It was a statement from the St. James Community Clinic, the one where I took Eli for his asthma treatments. It showed a balance of God. It was over $9,000, a balance I'd been chipping away at, $20 at a time, for 2 years. A thick red "paid in full" was stamped across it. The date was from an hour ago. I felt my knees go weak. I gripped the edge of the steel table. "You paid this." "I did. You looked into my life, into my brother." The relief was quickly replaced by a hot, sick wave of anger. I wasn't being asked. I was being told. "I am thorough," he said simply. "I don't make propositions without knowing the facts." $9,000. It was a mountain. He'd just leveled it, but it felt dirty. I hated being owned. I hated this feeling, this cold obligation that was settling in my stomach. "I don't work for favors," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't want to owe you anything." He actually looked surprised. "What do you suggest?" "A contract," I said, the words tumbling out. "I want a real one, on paper, not from this." I waved at the garage. "From a real company. I want to be a real employee, a consultant, something." He stared at me for a long, heavy silence. Silas shifted by the door. "Raven Dock Logistics," Lucian said. "It's my primary operations hub. You'll be on the payroll as a temporary auditor. Is that real enough?" "Yes," I said. It felt safer. A piece of paper was a shield. "And one more thing. My condition." "I'm listening." "My brother, Eli. He's 13. He studies every night from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. I help him with his homework. When I'm on this earth, those 2 hours are his. You don't call me. You don't text me. You don't send Silas to my door. I'm invisible. Period." This, I knew, was a test, a demand from a person with no power. Lucian didn't smile. He didn't hesitate. He just nodded. "Done." My shoulders sagged. "Okay, when do I start?" "Now," he said. "Silas will deliver your onboarding materials tonight at the diner. It's better if it looks casual." He slid a small, shrink-wrap box across the table, a burner phone. Simple, black, untraceable, and a laminated ID card. "Raven Dock Logistics," it read, "temporary staff." I looked at the photo. It was a grainy security cam shot of me from the diner last night. My stomach twisted. Then I looked at the name. Mara Quintero. "You spelled my name wrong," I said, my anger flaring up again. "I know," he said, his voice flat. "That ID is for you, but it's also a trap. If anyone FFIU, MPAI, a competitor ever logs that card, or photocopies it, or even just sees that spelling, I'll know where the leak came in. It's for your protection. Mara, not just mine." A chill went through me. This wasn't a game. "One last question, Ma," I said, my hand on the burner phone. "This auditing, these discrepancies. I need to know what I'm getting into. Does any of this involve kids? Hurting them? Moving them?" I couldn't. Not for all the money in the world. Not even for Eli. Lucian Caravello's face changed. The calculated, corporate mask dropped. For a second, I saw something dark and incredibly cold in his eyes. It wasn't anger at me. It was anger at the very idea. "I don't touch the forbidden," he said, and his voice was absolute. "Not me, not my family, not ever. That is a line I do not cross." I believed him. God help me. I believed him. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll do it." I slept for 5 hours, which felt like 5 minutes. Then I put on my uniform, the apron feeling heavier than usual, and walked back to the Blue Comet for my regular shift. The diner was slow. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean and cold. Around 10 o'clock, the bell jingled. Silas, the bodyguard, walked in. He was wearing jeans and a hoodie, trying to look normal. He failed. He sat at the counter, a few stools down from a young woman with a sharp black pixie cut who was reading a book and sipping herbal tea. "Coffee," Silas rumbled, "and a slice of the apple." I served him. He ate the pie in 3 bites. He pushed the plate away, dropped a $20 bill on the counter, and slid his hand over. His fingers brushed mine as he passed me the small box with the burner phone and the Mara ID card. It was a quick, seamless transfer, but not quick enough. I saw the woman with the pixie cut look up. Her eyes weren't on me. They were on Silas, reflected in the mirror behind the bar. She saw the pass. She saw the ID. Her face remained perfectly, unnervingly still. Silas stood up and walked out. I went to clear his plate, my heart thumping. The woman was gone. She'd left a $5 bill for her $2 tea, and next to it, holding the bill down, was a small, smooth gray stone. It was painted skillfully to look like a tiny lighthouse. A warning. I pocketed the stone, the burner phone heavy on the other side of my apron. I glanced down the counter. A trucker had left his copy of the East Bay Sentinel. A small headline at the bottom of the page caught my eye. Port worker found deceased. It read, "Drowning ruled workplace accident." I picked up Silas's dirty coffee cup, my hands perfectly steady. For the first time all night, I wasn't shaking from the caffeine. My apartment was too quiet. I'd spent the day trying to sleep, but the light outside my window felt too bright. The sounds of the neighborhood too loud. The $9,000 clinic bill was sitting on my kitchen table. The red, paid in full stamp looking like a brand in my sock drawer. The burner phone felt heavy, like it was made of lead. On my dresser, the small painted lighthouse rock was a silent accusation. I wasn't a waitress anymore. Not really. I was something else. An auditor, a ghost, a Mara. At 9 o'clock that night, 3 hours before my shift at the Comet, the burner buzzed. It was a harsh, rattling sound that made me jump. One text, not from a number, just a string of code. Garage, now. I put on my sneakers, my oldest jeans, and my thin raincoat. The air was heavy and damp, threatening more rain. I walked the mile to the garage by the river. This time, the bay door was rolled all the way up. The single bright light was on, illuminating the heavy steel table. It wasn't empty. It was covered with objects. Lucian Caravello was there, leaning against the table, waiting. Silas was by the door, as always, a mountain in the shadows. "You're punctual," Lucienne said. He wasn't in a suit. He was wearing dark pants and a gray Henley that fit him in a way that made me realize he wasn't just tall. He was strong. "I'm not getting paid to be late," I said, staying near the door. "You're not getting paid to stand there either. Come here. Your training begins." I walked into the light. On the table were half a dozen metal and plastic bolts. They looked like the seals I saw on the backs of trucks every day. "These are container seals," he said, picking one up. It was blue. "This is a clicker. Standard issue, bolt seal. You break it. It's broken. The serial number is laser etched. It matches the manifest. This." He picked up another one. This one red. Is a knockoff. It looked identical. "Feel them," he said. I picked up the blue one. It was heavy. The plastic smooth. I picked up the red one. The weight was almost the same. I don't get it. "Close your eyes," he commanded. "What?" "Close your eyes and feel them. Your eyes will lie to you. Your hands won't." I sighed, but I did it. He placed the blue one in my hand. I felt the smooth edge of the plastic casing. He swapped it for the red one. I felt it immediately. A tiny, almost invisible ridge of plastic right where the two halves of the mold had met. "A burr," I whispered, "on the casing." "The fakes are made fast. Their molds are cheap," he said. "The serial number is stamped, not etched. They can be snapped and replaced with a duplicate." Next, he pushed 2 stacks of paper toward me. "Bills of lading. One set is ours. One is the forgery. Find the difference." I held them side by side under the light. The font was the same. The watermarks matched. The layout was perfect. "I can't," I said, frustrated. "They're exactly the same." "You're looking. Don't look. What did I just teach you?" I picked up one stack, then the other. I felt the edge of the paper. Both were sharp. "I smell them," he said, his voice low. "Dude, are you kidding me?" I looked at Silas, who just stared back, his face stone. "I'm not smelling your paperwork." "Smell them. Mara." I grabbed the top sheet from the first stack, feeling like an idiot, and held it to my nose. It smelled like paper. Just paper. I grabbed the sheet from the second stack. The difference hit me instantly. It was sharp, a faint chemical tang, like nail polish remover. Ink, I said, looking at him. This one, it's sharper. Ours is a proprietary vegetable-based inket, he said, a note of approval in his voice. It dries slower, costs a fortune. The fakes use a standard solvent-based ink. It's fast, it's cheap, and it stinks. You've got about 24 hours before the smell fades. Most inspectors are too busy, or their noses are too full of diesel fumes, to notice. He handed me a small jeweler's loupe. Now, look at the edge. I leaned in, holding the paper to the light. The world shrank to a tiny, magnified circle. The light's wrong, I muttered, trying to angle the sheet. A shadow fell over me. His hand, warm and steady, covered mine. He wasn't grabbing me. He was just adjusting my grip on the paper, turning it into the beam. His fingers were long, his knuckles hard, and the side of his thumb brushed against my wrist, right where my pulse beat. Thump kick! My heart did a stupid, lurching flip-flop. It was so loud in my own ears. I was sure he could hear it. He must have felt it. His thumb seemed to rest there for a fraction of a second, a silent acknowledgement before his hand was gone. I see it, I said, my voice suddenly tight. I cleared my throat. The edge on the real one is clean. Laser cut, the fake, the fibers are torn. It's fuzzy, cut with a blade. Good, he said, moving back. You learn fast. The air in the garage was thick and damp. I hadn't even realized the rain had started again, a steady drumming on the metal roof. I was still wearing my raincoat, and it was dripping onto the concrete. Lucian turned, grabbed a clean, dry shop towel from a shelf, and walked back. He didn't toss it. He held it out. You're dripping, he said. I took it, wiping my face and hands. My old coat was rumpled, the collar twisted under. Before I could fix it, he reached out. His fingers, surprisingly gentle, caught the lapel of my coat and straightened it, smoothing the fabric over my shoulder. It wasn't a pass, it wasn't a caress, it was a gesture of maintenance, like he was straightening a picture on the wall, but it was possessive, somehow protective. It sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. I took a half step back, putting space between us. What is this, dude? I tried to make it a joke, to break the weird tension. Advanced Waitressing 101. You in full-on tutor mode now. From the shadows by the door, Silas actually let out a short, rough noise. It might have been a laugh. Lucian turned his head, his gray eyes unreadable in the harsh light. He wasn't angry. That faint ghost of a smile was back. That's the last time, he said, his voice soft. You get to call me that when you're not holding a coffee pot. My eyes flicked to Silas. He was wearing a dark t-shirt, and as he shifted, the light caught his neck. I saw it clearly for the first time. A thin, silvery white line that started just under his ear and disappeared into his collar. It was puckered at one end, a knife scar. He saw me looking. He rubbed his neck, a gesture that was probably automatic. Dock dispute, Silas rumbled. Back in '09, a guy thought he was faster. My mouth was dry. Was he? Silas smiled, and it was not a nice smile. I'm still here. The words hung in the garage. This was the world I'd just agreed to audit. Back to the diner, Lucienne said, pulling my attention like a magnet. You were seen last night. My stomach clenched. The woman, pixie cut. She left the Lighthouse Rock. Agent Merrill Cho, he said. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Federal Financial Integrity Unit. She's smart, which means she's dangerous. She saw the handoff. Right now. She thinks you're my new courier. My new mistake. Am I? You're my auditor, he corrected. And we're going to use her assumptions against her. Silas installed a new camera system at the Blue Comet this afternoon. What Sal would never... Sal was very accommodating, Lucienne cut in. When I offered to repave his parking lot and upgrade his walk-in freezer, the point is, the cameras are junk. They're dummies. Cho's tech team will tap into them. They'll see the feeds, and they'll realize they're looking at a cheap, closed-loop system that records nothing. It'll make the diner look normal. It'll make you look like small-time business. And what happens when I do find a bad number? You text me on the burner, but only when you're alone. If Silas is at the counter, or one of my other men, he paused. You'll need a signal. A signal? What, am I supposed to tug my earlobe? No. He picked up an imaginary coffee cup. When you bring the order, you place it down, and you tap the rim once with your index finger, like you're checking if the cup is too hot. He demonstrated. It was tiny, subtle, unnoticeable, unless you were looking for it. Silas will see it, he said. He will handle the man, retrieve the manifest, and I'll have my confirmation. Clean, simple. I paced away, my sneakers squeaking on the polished concrete. My head was spinning. Bolt seals, ink smells, dummy cameras, secret signals. This is a lot, more than I thought. I turned back too fast. My foot hit a dark patch on the floor I hadn't seen. A small, slick puddle of oil. My left foot went out from under me. There was no time to think, no time to even yelp. I was just falling. And then I wasn't... Lucian moved with a speed that didn't seem possible. 1 second, he was 10 feet away by the table. The next, he was there. His right arm locked around my waist like a steel band, yanking me off my feet and hard against him. My hands flew up and slammed into his chest. It was solid, not muscle, not fat, just solid, like hitting a reinforced wall. My face was crushed against his shirt, and my nose was filled with his scent. It wasn't cologne. It was clean, like mint, and something else, something warm and sharp, like wood smoke. I could feel his heartbeat, a slow, steady, powerful thump, thump, thump against my cheek. His arm was completely around my waist, holding my entire weight. His other hand was splayed flat on my back, steadying me. The garage, the rain, Silas, everything disappeared. There was only the solidness of him, the heat radiating through his shirt, and that scent. You okay? His voice was a low rumble, right by my ear. His breath was warm, fanning across my hair. My heart was jackhammering, not from the fall, from the catch. This was too close. This was the closest I had been to another person, and I couldn't remember. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't unwanted. It was just absolute. Yeah, I managed to breathe. Floor's slippery. He didn't let go. Not for 1 second. Then 2. He was looking down at the top of my head. I was completely trapped. But it was the safest I'd felt all week. I finally managed to push, just slightly, against his chest. I'm okay, you can let go now. He loosened his grip, but he did it slowly. He didn't just drop me. He slid his arm from my waist but kept his other hand on my arm, holding me steady until he was sure I had my balance. Be careful, he said, his voice still low. The tension in the air was so thick I could barely breathe. I thought you hated being called dude. I said, just to say something, just to break the spell. He looked down at me, and his gray eyes were impossibly serious. I do, he said. He paused, his gaze fixed on mine. But I'm starting to think it's okay when it comes from you. I pulled away, my skin burning where he'd touched me. I walked to the open bay door. The rain was a solid wall now, drumming on the roof, pouring off the edge in a silver sheet. He joined me, standing a proper, respectful 3 feet away. We just stood there, watching the rain hit the pavement, the puddles lit orange by the sodium streetlights. Why are you really doing this? I asked the storm. All this, the training, the fake cameras, the signals, this isn't just about discrepancies. This isn't just paperwork. Everything is about paperwork, he said. That's not an answer. I turned to face him, forcing him to look at me. What do you really want from me, Lucien, besides my neutral eyes and a new way to check your numbers? He watched the rain for a long moment. His shadow and mine were long and sharp on the concrete floor, stretching out into the darkness of the garage. Trust, he said. His voice was so quiet I barely heard it over the storm. I'm surrounded by people who are paid to agree with me, or people who are paid to lie to me. You don't know how... You're direct. It's valuable. Valuable, I repeated, the word tasting bitter, like an asset, like a partner. I laughed, a short, cold sound. Let's get one thing straight, boss. I'm doing this for Eli, for the $9,000. This is a job. I don't date my bosses. He turned to look at me. The orange light caught the sharp angle of his jaw. That ghost of a smile was back. But this time, it reached his eyes. Then I'll just have to promote you to partner quickly, won't I? And then he did it. He actually genuinely laughed. It wasn't a loud sound. It was a short, deep burst of amusement that shocked me. It changed his entire face, erasing the shadows and the severity. For just 1 second, he wasn't Lucian Caravello, the man with the anchor, and he was just a man, standing in a garage, laughing at the rain. The moment passed, he sobered, but the lightness remained in his eyes. Go home, Mara. Get some sleep before your shift. I nodded, suddenly exhausted, but wired. As I turned to leave, that scent hit me again. Mint and wood smoke, the smell of his shirt, the smell of him. It was a strange anchor, but it cut right through the fear and the smell of the river. I was halfway to the door, about to duck under the raised edge, when a sharp buzz vibrated in my jeans pocket. It wasn't my phone. It was the burner. I pulled it out. The cheap screen glowed with a single text message. Lucian was at my side in an instant, his face all business again. What is it? I read the text. It was just a string of letters and numbers, but I understood it now. Container KXCU 914007, I read aloud, my voice steady. It just changed gates, diverted from 8B to 12C, right now. Lucian looked over my shoulder at Silas. The bodyguard didn't speak. He just nodded once, already pulling his keys from his pocket. So much for sleep, Lucian said to me, his hand on my back, not touching but guiding me out into the rain. My first test, and my shift hadn't even started. My heart was still doing that stupid thump kick from when Lucien had caught me. He was standing there, all business again, his hand out for the burner phone. Let me see. I gave it to him. He looked at the text. KXCU 914007, divert 12C. That wasn't the plan, Silas rumbled from the doorway. Plans change, Lucien said, his voice flat. He looked at Silas, then at me. Silas, you take her. Go to berth 14B. 14B, I asked, confused. The text said 12C. The text is for whoever is listening, Lucian said, handing the burner back to me. It's noise. The real switch, the one they don't want anyone to see, always happens in the blind spot behind the 14B crane. Go now. Get a photo of the seal. I want the serial number. That's it. Do not engage. What about my shift? I asked, my voice weak. Sal will manage, Lucien said. Tonight, you're on the clock for Raven Dock Logistics. Go. Silas didn't say a word. He just jerked his head toward the door, and I followed him out into the rain. We didn't take the sedan. We got into a heavy-duty pickup truck, the kind with a Raven Dock Logistics logo on the side. It smelled like coffee and wet metal. Silas drove, his hands massive on the steering wheel, his eyes scanning everything mirrors, side streets, the dark sky. The port at night was a different universe. It was a city of giant steel dinosaurs. The transtainer cranes moving slowly under massive floodlights, lifting containers that looked like tiny, colorful bricks from this distance. The air was loud with the hum of generators, the clang of metal on metal, and the constant beep, beep, beep of trucks in reverse. Silas bypassed the main gate, flashing the Raven Dock ID at a guard who just waved him through. We drove down a long, dark access road, the container stacks rising on either side of us like skyscrapers. He killed the headlights as we pulled up to berth 14B. It was dark, a deliberate shadow in the otherwise brightly lit yard. Wait here, Silas said. Like hell, I said, grabbing the burner phone. He said, get a photo. I'm the auditor. Remember, you're the fridge." A low sound rumbled in Silas's chest. "Fine, but you do exactly what I say. You breathe when I say. You move when I say." We got out. The air tasted like salt and rust. We moved into the alley between two towering stacks of containers. At the end, I could see it. A single blue box, KXCU 914007. The electronic board above the bay listed the container, but the customs code next to it was wrong. "That's a code for dry goods," I whispered. "It's supposed to be high-end electronics," Silas murmured, his eyes scanning the darkness above us. We got closer. The paint smell hit me first, that sharp chemical smell from the garage. "They painted it," I said, "recently." I looked at the number stenciled on the side, KXCU 914007. It looked right, but I leaned in, my nose almost touching the cold, wet metal. "The stencil, Silas, look." He squinted. "It's doubled," I said, my training kicking in. "They painted over the real number and stenciled this one on top. Look at the edge of the 7 and the 0. The paint is thicker, it's sloppy." "Get the seal," he ordered. We moved to the back of the container. The locking bars were in place, and a single red bolt seal was threaded through them. Red, the knockoff. "It's a fake," I said. "The burr, I can see it from here." I raised the burner phone, my hands shaking, trying to get the camera to focus on the small serial number. "We've got company." Silas's voice was flat. I froze. 2 men. They'd stepped out from the gap between the next containers. Silent as ghosts. They were wearing port operator coveralls, but they were too big, too clean. They weren't mechanics. "You're a long way from the diner, sweetheart," one of them said, smiling. He had a greasy ponytail. "Lost our way," Silas grunted, stepping half in front of me, shielding me from their view. "I think you found exactly what you were looking for." The second man said. They started to spread out, flanking us. "And Mr. Bellafiore doesn't like people looking." Silas didn't tense. He just settled. "Mara," he said, his voice dangerously calm, "get the picture." "What?" The man with the ponytail lunged. Silas moved. He wasn't fast. He was just immediate. He grabbed a long orange and silver signal stick from his belt, the kind ground crews use to guide planes. He didn't swing it. He just snapped it. The sound like a firecracker. A brilliant, blinding orange light flared to life. He jammed the glowing end right at the first guy's face. The man screamed, clutching his eyes. "Now," Silas roared. He shoved the second guy hard, sending him stumbling back into the container wall. I dropped to one knee, my hands shaking so bad the first shot was a blur. "Focus." "Mara," I aimed again. The serial number, the red plastic casing. Click, the small telltale burr. Click, the new paint on the number 7. Click. Enough. A new voice, a new light. Headlights flooded the alley, pinning us in a blinding white glare. A black SUV, the kind government officials use, rolled to a stop, blocking our only exit. The 2 thugs scrambled back, grinning. They were protected. The driver's door of the SUV opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a dark windbreaker with MP and yellow letters on the breast. He had a baseball cap pulled low, shadowing his face. "That's far enough," the man said. His voice was cold, flat, like polished steel. "This is a secure MPAI area. You're lost." "Port security inspection," Silas said, his voice a low growl. The orange signal stick was still lit, making him look demonic. "I am Port Authority," the man said, stepping forward. I could see his face now. He looked more like a banker than a cop. This had to be Director Calder. "And I don't know you. Drop the stick. Both of you. Hands on the container." "He's with me, Director Calder." The voice came from the darkness behind the SUV. "Lucien?" He walked into the headlights, and my jaw almost hit the pavement. He looked completely calm, like he was taking an evening stroll. His white shirt sleeves were still rolled up, and he was carrying a white pastry box from a bakery in the Italian district, tied up with red and white string. "Cannoli," he offered, holding the box up. Calder looked stunned. "Caravello. What is this? This is an active investigation. Your man," he gestured to Silas, "is interfering." "My man," Lucien said, his voice all smooth business, "is inspecting my container. Our container, I should say." He patted the blue box. "KXCU 914007. Ravendock Logistics is the broker of record. We received an automated alert about a compromised seal. Naturally. We came to check." "You can't touch that seal," Calder snapped. "It's evidence." "Oh, I agree," Lucien said, "which is why I brought these." He set the cannoli box down on a nearby barrel. He didn't open it from the top. He pulled a tab on the side, and the front panel fell open. It wasn't cannolis. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, was a pair of heavy-duty, calibrated bolt cutters, a digital camera, and a bag of new certified blue clicker seals, each in a numbered plastic bag. "This is a proprietary shipment," Lucien said, his voice suddenly hard, all traces of politeness gone. "Under the Customs Temp Check Clause, Section 4, Subsection B. If a broker suspects cargo tampering that poses an immediate risk to manifest integrity, which a knockoff seal does, we are authorized to photograph, remove, and replace the seal with a certified temporary, pending a full customs inspection." He smiled, but it was just a baring of teeth, "which I'm happy to schedule for tomorrow, or perhaps the day after. Your call." Calder was trapped. He knew Lucien was quoting law, or at least a loophole so deep it might as well be law. To challenge him here would mean seizing a Caravello container, which would trigger a dozen lawsuits by morning. "This isn't over, Caravello," Calder spat. "It is for tonight, Director," Lucien said politely, already picking up the bolt cutters. Calder gave him a look of pure venom, nodded to his driver, and the SUV backed out of the alley and disappeared. The two thugs had vanished. As the SUV's taillights faded, I looked at one of the thugs, who was giving us a final glare from the shadows. I saw his hands. "Lucien," I whispered, "that guy, his hands." "What about them?" he said, snapping the red seal off the container. "They're covered in dust, a fine white powder, and—" I sniffed the air. The chemical smell of new paint was everywhere. "I know that dust. It's pilot's dust. Lime powder. They use it at the X-Row warehouses for moisture control." Lucien froze. He looked at Silas. It was a look that lasted a fraction of a second, but a whole conversation happened in it. X-Row. A high-pitched whine shattered the quiet. The second thug, he was in a forklift, the electric kind, and it shot out from behind a stack, making a run for the access road. Silas didn't even wait for an order. He sprinted, not after the forklift, but to the side of the massive ship-to-shore crane looming over us. He grabbed a thick yellow lanyard hanging from the scaffolding and pulled. A sound that I felt in my bones, a deep, deafening blare, exploded across the port. It was the ship horn. It was so loud it shook my teeth. The forklift driver, blinded by the headlights and deafened by the horn, panicked. He yanked the wheel, trying to cut between two stacks. He misjudged. Crunch. The forks rammed directly into a stack of empty metal shipping racks. The sound of tortured metal was horrific. The forklift died. The driver was slumped over the wheel, shaking and disoriented. But he wasn't bleeding. He hadn't been hit by anything but his own fear. Silas started toward him, his face a mask of cold fury. "Don't," Lucien commanded, his voice sharp. Silas stopped dead, his fists clenched. "Boss, he's the link. He'll talk." "We don't touch him." Lucien pulled out his personal phone, a sleek black smartphone. "We," he said, "are law-abiding businessmen. Remember?" He dialed a number. "Port security, main gate. This is Lucien Caravello at berth 14B. We've had a small accident. One of your forklift operators appears to have lost control of his vehicle. Yes, he seems uninjured, but you should probably send a team and a supervisor. Thank you." He hung up, then he looked at Silas. Let the local guys handle him, not Calder, the locals. He'd kept his hands clean. He'd captured the man, without laying a finger on him, and handed him over to the correct authorities. Boxing called her out. My heart was a hummingbird in my chest. I was shaking, not from cold, but from adrenaline. This was the game. This was the real game. I looked across the yard, past the stacks, toward the main channel. Under a bright, flickering sodium light, about 200 yards away, a figure was standing, just watching. Pixie cut, Agent Merrill Cho. She was too far to have heard anything, but she'd seen it all. The SUV, the forklift, the horn. She wanted us to see her. She lifted one hand and tapped the FFIU logo on her windbreaker. Once, twice, 3 times. Strike 3, Caravello. Then she turned and melted back into the shadows. A cold dread settled in my stomach. I was in a war, not a fist fight, but a war of lawyers, federal agents, and rival organizations, and I was standing dead center. "We're leaving," Lucien said. He snapped a new blue seal on the container, photographed it, and we walked back to Silas's truck. We drove in silence, the port shrinking behind us. When we were a few blocks away, back in the Ironbound, Silas pulled over onto a dark street. Lucien turned in his seat. The cab of the truck felt tiny. I was hyper-aware of his knee, just inches from mine. He didn't say, "Good job." He didn't say thanks. He just reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a flat, paper-wrapped package. He pushed it into my hands. "You did well," he said, "but your hands are dirty." I looked down. My hands were covered in grease and rust from the container. I tore the paper. Inside was a pair of the softest, blackest leather gloves I'd ever seen. They were lined with cashmere. They probably cost $200. An inferno of pride and anger flared in my chest. It was a thank you, but it was also a message. Stay clean. Don't get your hands dirty, like I was some delicate thing. Like I hadn't just stood my ground while men were lunging and forklifts were crashing. "What's this?" I asked, my voice tight. "A gift," he said. "No." I shoved the gloves back, hard, into his chest. They hit the solid wall of him and fell to the floor mat. "I don't need your gifts. I keep my own hands clean, my own way." Silas stared straight ahead through the windshield, not moving a muscle. Lucien didn't move. He didn't get angry. He just looked at me. His gray eyes searched my face in the dim light. I held his gaze, refusing to back down. Finally, slowly, he bent down and picked up the gloves. He brushed a piece of dirt off them. He turned to me, and his voice was so low, so unguarded, it barely sounded like him. "I know," he said. He said it like a fact, like my defiance wasn't a surprise. It was a confirmation. He didn't try to force them on me. He just took my limp raincoat pocket and gently, almost impersonally, tucked the gloves inside. "You'll want them," he said, his voice back to normal. "It gets cold on the docks." Silas started the truck. He dropped me at the corner by the Blue Comet. My shift started in, 20 minutes. I looked like I'd been in a fight and my hair was soaked. "Go to work," Lucien said from the passenger window. "Act normal. Serve coffee. If anyone from X-Row comes in, tap the cup. We'll handle it from here." I just nodded, my mind numb. I got out and slammed the door. I was halfway across the street, the buzzing neon of the diner seeming like a joke from another life, when my real phone, the cheap, prepaid one in my back pocket, vibrated. It wasn't at the burner. It was a text from a blocked, unknown number. I stopped under a streetlight. My fingers were clumsy as I opened the message. It was just one line. "Don't go to X-Row. They know you were there. Someone is going to disappear tonight." I was frozen on the sidewalk. The neon sign of the Blue Comet buzzed behind me, a false, cheerful sound. The phone in my hand felt like a small, hot brick. Someone is going to disappear tonight. The Ravendock truck hadn't pulled away. The passenger door swung open. "Get in," Lucien's voice. It wasn't a request. I didn't argue. I didn't even look back at the diner. I climbed into the cab, my knees shaking. Silas didn't wait. He pulled the truck into a smooth U-turn, heading away from the port, away from my apartment, into the center of Newark. "The text," Lucien said, his hand out. I gave him my personal phone. He read the message, his jaw tight. "X-Row, they're confirming your story." He handed it back. "This phone is a liability. Turn it off. When we're done, you're getting a new one and a new number." I powered it down. The screen went black, and I felt like I'd been cut off from the only world I knew. "Where are we going?" I whispered. "My apartment—" "No," he said, his eyes on the road. "Your apartment isn't safe. Not until we know who sent this." We drove for 10 minutes, weaving through the dark, quiet streets. Halsey Street. This area was dead at night. Mostly old storefronts, lawyers' offices, and closed-up shops. Silas pulled into a narrow alley behind a row of brick buildings and killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. "Wait here," Silas said, and he got out. He didn't lock the truck. He just disappeared into a dark doorway. "He's the perimeter," Lucienne said. "Come on." He led me to the same door. It was heavy steel, painted over a dozen times. He used a key, not on the knob, but on a separate, high-security lock-up near the frame. The click was heavy, final. We stepped inside. The air was cold. It smelled old. It smelled like dust and paper and the faint, oily tang of ink. He hit a switch, and a single bare bulb hanging from a long wire flickered to life. We were in a print shop, an ancient one, massive. Dark green printing presses stood in the gloom like sleeping iron elephants. Stacks of paper, yellowed with age, were piled on wooden skids, shelves of lead type, a huge bladed cutting table. It was a museum. "My grandfather's," Lucian said, his voice softer in here. "He was a typesetter. Back in the old country, when he came here, this was his first business, before everything else." He walked to the back, where a small office was partitioned off with frosted glass. Inside, there was a metal desk, a cot, and a small counter with a hot plate and a kettle. It was Spartan, but it was clean. "This is your safe house." "This is my safe house," he corrected. "No one else comes here. Not Silas, not my family, just me, and now you." He took off his coat and slung it over a chair. I was still standing there, dripping and trembling, my raincoat a useless, thin layer. I was cold. My adrenaline crash was coming, and it was coming hard. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his face softened. The boss, the strategist, the man who pulled horns on ships. He was gone. "You're freezing," he said. He pointed to the kettle. "Coffee." "No," I said, my teeth chattering. "Please, no more coffee. My heart feels like it's going to stop." He paused, then he went to a small, locked cabinet, opened it, and pulled out a red and white canister. Hot cocoa mix, the cheap kind, with the tiny marshmallows. I must have looked surprised. "What?" he said, a shadow of that smile returning. "I have a sweet tooth." He filled the kettle with water from a 5-gallon jug and plugged it in. While it heated, he pointed to a wool blanket folded on the cot. "Take off the coat. Mara, you'll get sick." I did, my fingers fumbling with the buttons. I was just in my jeans and my diner uniform, which was thin and damp. I wrapped the blanket around my shoulders. It was heavy and smelled faintly of that same wood smoke and mint, his scent. He made the cocoa in 2 thick, mismatched mugs. He didn't have milk. He handed one to me. Our fingers brushed as I took it. His skin was warm. Mine was ice. I held the mug, the ceramic warming my hands. He didn't drink his. He just leaned against the counter, watching me. "You're not safe at your apartment," he said. "Or the diner. Not tonight. That text wasn't a warning. It was a threat. They know who you are. They know you're with me." "Santo Bellafiore," I said. His head snapped up, his gray eyes sharp. "The man at the dock. You remembered the name." "He doesn't like people looking. That's what the thug said. Now I get a text. Who is he? Lucienne, really?" I needed to know. I had a right to know. I'd held up my end. He was quiet for a long time, listening to the old building creak. "Santo," he said, "was my father's partner, his protege, you could say. When my father died, I took over the legitimate side of the business, the logistics, the shipping Raven dock. Santo was supposed to handle the other side, the old ways, but he got greedy. He started mixing the two, using my legitimate channels to move his product. Product, I said, my stomach cold. Not what you think, he said quickly, remembering my line in the sand. He's not a monster. He's a thief. Electronics, fine art, pharmaceuticals. But his methods are messy. They draw attention. They draw men like Calder. They get people killed, like that workplace accident in the Sentinel. So you're fighting him, for control. I'm ending him, he said, his voice flat. I'm cutting him out. This audit you're doing, it's the knife. You're finding the links between his ghost manifests and my real ones. You're giving me the proof I need to cut the cancer out before it kills the whole body, before he brings the FFIU down on all of us. And Agent Chewie? She thinks we're the same. Her. Calder. They can't tell the difference between a thief and a businessman. They just see the name Caravello. We were quiet again. The bare bulb hummed. I can't do this, I whispered. I looked down into the mug. The tiny marshmallows were melting. I can't. My brother, Eli, if they know where I work, they know where I live, they know about him. They won't touch him. You don't know that. You said it yourself. I'm a liability. I'm a waitress. You paid my brother's $9,000 bill, and you put a target on his back. I put a target on my back, he said, his voice rising. I put you in the middle. I know. He set his mug down and stepped in front of me. I was still wrapped in the blanket, the hot mug in my hands. I know what it is, he said, his voice suddenly quiet, raw. To be responsible for a family you can't protect. My mother, she left when I was 10, just walked out. I was the one who found the note. I've spent my entire life building walls, building a fortress so high that nothing no one could ever get out again, or get in. He was closer now. I had to tilt my head back to look at him. And then you, he said, his voice a low vibration. Walk into my diner and call me dude. And you're not scared, you're just angry. And real. My hair, still damp from the rain, was stuck to my cheek. My heart was doing that slow, heavy thump-thump. He lifted his hand slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. His fingers, warm and a little rough, brushed the wet strands of hair from my face. He didn't just tuck them behind my ear. His hand lingered, his thumb resting gently on my cheekbone. His touch was electric. It wasn't a gesture of maintenance. It was a question. His gray eyes searched mine, asking for permission. I don't know what he saw, but I felt my own eyes flutter closed. I leaned into his hand, just a fraction of an inch. That was all the answer he needed. He bent his head. It was slow, so slow. I felt his breath on my lips before I felt him. It was warm, and it smelled like chocolate. His lips brushed mine. It wasn't a kiss. It was a test, just a soft, warm pressure, a question. My breath hitched. I didn't pull away. He came back, this time. His lips settled against mine. It was firm and sure, and it sent a jolt straight down to my toes. It wasn't hungry. It was deliberate, like he was tasting me, memorizing me. My hands were still wrapped around the warm mug. I couldn't move. I could only feel the pressure of his mouth, the solidness of his chest. So close I could feel the heat of it, the way my pulse was hammering in my throat. He pulled back, just enough to speak, his forehead resting against mine. His eyes were closed. I don't want you as a shield, Mara, he whispered, his voice thick. I want you at my side. My eyes opened. His were still closed, his dark eyelashes resting on his cheek. He was giving me all the power. I can't, I breathed. I can't stand at your side if I'm in the dark. My voice was shaking, but it was firm. No more games, Lucian, no more half-truths. I want the truth, all of it. He opened his eyes. They were dark, serious. Santo Bellafiore, he said. He's the one. He's using Calder at the MPAI to cover his tracks. He's the one who runs X-Row. We have to stop him. Together. It was the truth. It felt like it. He kissed me again, and this time, it wasn't a question. It was the answer. It was a deep, claiming pressure that made my head swim. My fingers uncurled from the mug. I set it on the counter with a clink. My hands, free, found the front of his shirt, gripping the fabric. He made a low sound in his throat, and his arm came around my waist, the one that had caught me in the garage. He pulled me flush against him, deepening the kiss, and I was gone. I was drowning in that wood smoke scent, in the impossible, safe strength of his arms, in the first real kiss of my entire life. It was everything. It was hot and desperate and slow, and it felt like home. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. The air in the tiny office was charged. He kept his arm around my waist, his hand splayed on my lower back. I kept my hands on his chest, my head tucked under his chin. He wanted to go further. I could feel it in the tension of his arm, in the way he was breathing. And God help me. I wanted to, too. But I pulled my head back. Lucien. He looked at me. His eyes clouded, his lips, God, his lips. "We can't," I said. "Not like this. Not yet. It's too much, too fast." He didn't argue. He didn't push. He just held me. He let out a long, slow breath, and I felt his body relax, the tension draining out of him. He kissed my forehead, a long, lingering press. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry. You're right." He let me go, but he kept one hand on my arm, like he couldn't break contact completely. "But you need this," he said. He went to his desk, unlocked a drawer, and pulled out a single, heavy key. "That metal cabinet in the corner. If it ever changes color, if I tell you to run, or if I don't come back, you use this." I looked at him, confused. "There's $10,000 in cash in there. Mara, a burner phone with one number in it, a man who will get you out of the country, and a passport. It's clean. The name is different, but the picture is you. It's your escape route. Free and clear. No strings." I was stunned. "You just give me that." "I want you at my side," he repeated, pressing the key into my hand. His skin was warm against my palm. "That means you have to be able to walk away. You're not my prisoner, Mara. You're my partner." I closed my hand around the key. The metal was cold. "Okay," I whispered. "Your partner." "What?" "One more thing," he said, pointing to my abandoned cocoa mug. "The signal, tapping the rim, it's good. But it's for Silas. It's for the muscle." He picked up his own mug. "If you need me, if it's something only I can understand, touch the handle." He curled his index finger around the C shape of the handle. "Don't tap, just touch. A signal only we know." I nodded, my throat tight. We stood there for another minute. The silence comfortable now. The moment had passed. The desire was still there, a low, simmering heat under the surface. But it was contained, held in reserve, a promise for later. Outside, in the alley. A heavy truck rumbled past. Its headlights flashed through the high, dusty windows of the print shop, sweeping across the room. For just a second, a shadow was thrown against the frosted glass of the office door. A man, standing in the alley. Before I could even gasp, the shadow was gone. "What?" Lucien was at the door, peering into the dark shop. "I thought I saw someone." I said, "A shadow," when the truck passed. Silas was inside the print shop in an instant, a dark shape moving with impossible speed. He went to the front windows, peering out onto Halsey Street. "Nothing," he rumbled. "Street's empty, alley's clear. Probably just a reflection." I wasn't so sure. Lucien pulled me away from the glass partition. "You're safe here. Silas is on the door. Rest, I'll take the cot." "No," I said. "You take it. I'm too wired to sleep." My personal phone, the one he'd told me to turn off, was sitting on the desk. As I went to pick it up, the dark screen suddenly lit up. It wasn't a call. It was a push notification from the East Bay Sentinel News app. My blood ran cold. I read the headline aloud. "MPAI Director Calder suspended, pending internal investigation." Lucien looked at the screen. He wasn't surprised. He was satisfied. The anchor, the man had just sunk a federal director without raising his voice. The curtain was ripping, and I was standing on the stage, right next to him, The news of Calder's suspension hit the print shop like a thunderclap, but Lucien didn't celebrate. He just took the phone from my hand and read the headline, his face grim. "This is bad," he said. Bad? I was stunned. We were standing in the cold, dusty office, the single bare bulb humming over our heads. "Dude, you just took out a crooked director. How is that bad?" "Calder was a shield," Lucien said, his voice flat, all business. The man who had kissed me last night was gone, replaced by the strategist. He was sloppy. He was greedy, but he was known. He kept the FFIU contained. He kept Meryl Cho in her box. Now the box is broken. Bellafiore Santo, he's not going to replace Calder. He's going to scorch the earth. He started pacing, moving out of the small office and into the cavernous main floor. Among the dead printing presses, I followed, pulling the wool blanket tighter around my shoulders. "He's been running a shell game," Lucien said, thinking aloud, tapping his fingers on the cold iron of a machine. "He's not just swapping manifests. He's smarter than that. He's swapping cargo. He uses my legitimate shipping contracts, textiles from Vietnam, machine parts from Germany, clean. Then he uses a ghost fund, a fake venture capital firm called Maritime Aegis Capital, to buy the cargo mid-transit. He's laundering. He's hiding," Lucien corrected. "He uses the Aegis paperwork to justify rerouting the container to a different berth, like 14B. His crew goes in, empties my textiles, and fills the box with his stolen goods microchips, pharmaceuticals, whatever. Then he fakes the seal, and the container goes back into my network, using my original, clean manifest. It gets shipped to my client in Chicago, who signs for textiles. But somewhere along the way, Santos people intercept the truck and swap the cargo back. It's a 3-card Monte, and I'm the table." "But the data," I said, my mind racing. "The numbers on the manifests. Someone has to be changing them in the port's digital system. The diversions, the weight logs." "Exactly," White, he said. "He has someone inside the system, a data entry clerk, a coder. Someone who can make a container weigh 20 tons on paper when it's really carrying 5. That's the nerve center. That's the link we're missing." That link walked into the Blue Comet Diner at 3 o'clock the next afternoon. I was back in my uniform. Sal had given me a look that was half pity, half fear, and said, "Just let me know if you need a day off. Mara, on the house." The power of a repaved parking lot. The diner was mostly empty. Just a few truckers. The man who came in was small, thin, and looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He was Asian, maybe in his late 20s, wearing a thin tech support jacket and glasses. He looked at every face in the diner before sliding onto a stool at the far end of the counter. He was vibrating, his hands shaking so badly he could barely read the menu. I walked over, pot in hand. "Coffee?" "Tea," he whispered. "Jasmine, please." I made the tea. His eyes followed my every move. He wasn't looking at me like Harridan. He was looking at me like I was either his executioner or his savior. I set the mug down in front of him. His shaking hand went to the cup. He looked me right in the eye, his own wide with terror, and his index finger, it didn't tap the rim. It curled, just for a second, around the handle. The signal, the one for Lucien. My blood went cold. I glanced at the door. No Silas, no Lucien. This was just him. "My break's in 5, I said, my voice low and even. I wiped down the counter. "You look like you could use some pie." 5 minutes later, I slid into the booth across from him. He hadn't touched his tea. "You signaled," I said. "The boss isn't here. You're talking to me." "I know," he whispered. He licked his lips. "I was hoping it was you. You're the one at the diner, the new one, the auditor." "My name is Mara. What's yours?" Kai Kwan. I'm a systems analyst at the container yard. I run the script." My heart hammered. This was it. The nerve center. "The script for Bellafiore," I stated. He flinched, looking around. "Please. He made me. He found out my parents in Guangdong, they have no papers. He said he'd have them deported. He said he'd hurt them if I didn't fix the numbers. I just changed the code. That's all." I just make the numbers match. And you sent me the text, I said, about X-Row. He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. I saw what they did to the man, the one who drowned. He was a driver. He just asked too many questions. Now they're looking at me. They're cleaning house. I can't. He broke, his voice cracking. I have a wife, a baby. Please, I just want out. What do you have, Kai? I asked, my voice gentle but firm. Everything, he whispered. The script and the logs, all the logs, every manifest I've ever changed, every ghost container. It's years. It's all on a drive. I'll give it to Mr. Caravello. But he has to get my family out. Safe passage, please. That night at the print shop, I laid it all out for Lucien. He was quiet for a long time. We pull him out. Tonight, we get the drive and we put him and his family on a plane. No, I said. He looked up, surprised. I was standing by the desk, not wrapped in his blanket. I was his partner. No, I repeated. We pull him out, and Bellafiore just finds another coder. We get the logs, and Bellafiore claims they're fakes. We haven't solved the problem. We've just postponed it. Kai doesn't even know where the server is. He says the script is remote. It pushes the changes from an anonymous IP. We need the server. Lucien. We need the machine. So what do you suggest, Mara, he asked. And there was no condescension. It was a real question. We set a trap, I said. We feed Kai a new manifest, a fake one, a high-priority shipment. But the digital file, it's a Trojan horse. My community college professor called it a digital watermark. We embed a tiny piece of code in the file itself. The second Kai's script copies or alters that file. The watermark activates. It pings us. It'll trace the connection. It'll give us the IP address of Bellafiore's server. Lucien stared at me. That slow half smile I was beginning to know spread across his face. A digital trap. You're not just an auditor, are you? I'm a fast learner, I said. He picked up his phone. Silas, get the tech team from Raven Dock on a conference call. Now, Miss, Quintero has their new assignment. He held the phone out to me. He'd just given me the keys to his kingdom. He was trusting me, not just with his secrets, but with his operation. The plan was set for the following night, but the world wouldn't wait. The next afternoon, the burner phone Lucien had given me buzzed, a text from an unlisted number. The lighthouse, 3 p.m., alone. Come talk about your future. My stomach twisted. The lighthouse, Agent Merrill Cho? I didn't tell Lucien. This was my meeting, my problem. I went to a small, sterile coffee shop downtown, the one with the big lighthouse mural painted on the wall. She was in a corner booth, wearing a gray university hoodie, looking like a grad student cramming for finals. You're Mara, she said, not looking up from her laptop as I sat down, spelled with an H, sloppy work, or a test. What do you want, Agent Cho? She snapped the laptop shut. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and completely devoid of warmth. You're smart, too smart to be a mule for a mobster, but that's what you are. I don't care about the name. Caravello, Bellafiore, it's the same organization. Two snakes from the same pit, just fighting over the same rat. I'm not a mule, I said. You're a felony waiting to happen, she shot back. I saw you at 14B. I know about Calder. You're in deep. Right now, I can paint you as a victim, an informant. You keep going. And you're an accessory, a co-conspirator. She leaned in. I'm offering you a one-time deal, a life raft. Give me what you have, the logs, the data, everything you're building against Bellafiore. And give me Caravello. You tie them together, you hand me the whole rotten organization on a platter, and I make you disappear. You and Eli. Witness protection, new names, new city, a clean start. $9,000 will look like pocket change. The offer hung in the air, the easy out, the clean break. A life where I didn't have to smell ink on paper or check for burrs on bolt seals. But I thought of Lucien's hand on my cheek. I thought of him trusting me with his grandfather's safe house. I thought of him saying, I don't touch the forbidden. And I thought of Kai Kwan shaking in the diner. I'm not interested in disappearing, I said. My voice was steady. I like my life. I like my name. Cho's eyes narrowed. I'll help you, I said. I'll help you get Bellafiore. He's the one poisoning the water. He's the one who had Calder in his pocket. He's the one killing people. I'll get you the data. I'll get you the server. But not Caravello, she said. But not Caravello, I agreed. And I want terms, 2 of them. You're in no position to... 2 terms, I insisted. Or I walk out of here and you get nothing. First, my brother and I are ghosts. Our names are never spoken, never written in a file, never see a courtroom. We were never here. Second, the workers, the clerks, the drivers, the guys like Kai who are caught in the middle with no way out. They get immunity, all of them. You go for the head, you leave the rank and file alone. She stared at me, a long, calculating look. She was weighing her options, a clean sweep, or a guaranteed conviction on a major player. You get me Bellafiore, the data, and the server, she said finally, and we have a deal. But the second I think you're protecting Caravello, the deal is off, and I will bury you under the jail. I'm protecting my brother, I said, and the workers, that's all. I told Lucien I had met with her. He was waiting for me at the print shop, and he wasn't surprised. I had Silas in the coffee shop 2 tables over. He said, You what? I felt a hot flash of anger. You don't trust me. I trust you, he said, his voice quiet. He walked over to the giant, cold printing press, his hand resting on the iron. I don't trust her. I know her. She will use you. She will use your data. And at the last second, she will try to sweep us all into the same net. She thinks I'm my father. She thinks this is all just a mob war. It's not, I challenged. No, he said, turning to me. It's a sanitation. And I don't care if she's the one who drives the garbage truck. But you're the one at the wheel. Mara, not her. When the time comes, you choose the right minute to press the button. The port was a city of shadows. Our plan was in motion. To give Kai cover, Silas, wearing a stained foreman's vest and smelling strongly of whiskey he'd poured on himself, started a loud, screaming match with a crane operator over a missing container. It was brilliant theater. 2 of Bellafiore's dockwalkers, the same thugs from 14B, moved in to watch the show. All eyes were off the terminals. In that window, Kai hit enter. He ran the script on our Trojan Horse manifest. I was in the back of a Raven Dock surveillance van, a windowless plumber's van parked a 1/4 mile away, a high-end laptop balanced on my knees. The screen, which had been a blank map, suddenly flashed, IP trace active routing. A red line shot across the map of New Jersey. It didn't go to X-Row. It didn't go to the port. It stopped. A single blinking red dot, Harrison, an industrial block. I ran the address, a derelict building, the old Passaic safe driver school. Lucien, I said into the burner, we have him. We have the server. I was about to close the laptop when the screen went black. My heart stopped. Then white text appeared, cursive, like a signature. I see you, Mara. The misspelled name. He wasn't just at the server. He was on the server. Right now. He knew I was in the system. He knew. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking. I couldn't breathe. The van door slid open, and Silas climbed in. Lucien is moving his own team to Harrison. Did it work? Yeah, I said, my voice thin. It worked. I didn't tell him. I couldn't. This wasn't business. This was personal. This was a threat aimed right at me. And I was suddenly, terribly, alone. We started to pull away, but a figure darted from the shadows. Banging on the passenger side window, I jumped. It was Kai. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. I rolled down the window. Kai, get back. It's not safe. I know, he panted, shoving something into my hand. It was small, plastic, a bright red USB drive. I ran the script, and then the system it talked to me. It said goodbye. He knows. He knows. Kai. This is it, he said, his eyes wild. This is everything, the logs, years. Please, you promised. Get my family out. Please. He melted back into the night. I looked at the red drive in my hand. Bellafiore's entire history. My burner phone buzzed. The one Cho had contacted me on. A new text. "We have the IP. We're mobilizing for the Harrison raid. Make sure Caravello is there. We need him at the scene to connect him to the data. It's the only way the deal holds." I sat in the dark, the van rumbling beneath me. In my left hand, I held the USB drive, the key to destroying Bellafiore. In my right, the phone, the key to trapping Lucien. And in my chest, I held a new, cold secret. "I see you. Mara, I didn't go back to my apartment. I didn't go back to the diner. The print shop was a tomb, but it was our tomb. Silas was a ghost at the front door, a shadow in the alley. The city moved on, but inside, we were in the eye of the storm. Lucien didn't stay in the print shop, and he took me to another place, one even he seemed to have forgotten. A small, cold-water attic apartment in a building he owned overlooking the Morris Canal. It was one room, under the eaves, with a sloped ceiling and a single round window. It was empty, a bed, a small table, but it was safe. We stood at the window, watching the black water slide by. The lights from the highway on the other side of the canal were just a blurry, watercolor smear on the surface. The only sound was the hushed shush of tires on wet pavement and the slow, heavy drip, drip, drip of rain from the gutter. The raid was set for tomorrow, 0 hour. I was wrapped in that same wool blanket, the one that smelled like him. I was so tired of being scared. "I used to dream about Atlantic City," I said, my voice sounding small in the quiet room. He turned from the window. "What?" "When I was a kid, before Eli's asthma got bad, before everything, I thought it was the most magical place on earth. I just wanted to ride the steel pier, eat funnel cake until I got sick, and just walk on the boards, not owing anyone anything." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Stupid." "It's not stupid," he said. He was standing so close, but not touching me. "Yes, it is," I said, turning to face him. The blanket felt too heavy. "You know what's stupid? Being ashamed. I was so ashamed. Lucien, for so long. Ashamed of my shoes. Ashamed of my apartment. Ashamed that I had to count my tips twice, just to see if we could afford the good milk for Eli. Ashamed that I dropped out of college after 2 semesters. I wanted to learn logistics. I wanted to be, I don't know, more someone." The confession just poured out of me. All the years of smiling at men like Harridan, of swallowing my pride until it choked me. It was all there, in that cold, empty room. He didn't say anything. He just listened. "You control everything," I whispered. "You snap your fingers and a $9,000 bill disappears. You make a phone call and a federal director is gone. I don't know how to be that. I just know how to survive." He finally moved, his hands coming up to rest on my shoulders. Over the blanket, his thumbs drew small, warm circles. "My mother left," he said, his voice a low rumble. I stopped. I'd been expecting a platitude, a reassurance, not this. "I was 10, he said, his eyes not on me, but on the black, moving water outside. "I woke up for school, and she wasn't there. She just wasn't. There was a note on the kitchen table. It said, 'Sorry,' and she left. No one ever found her. No one really looked." His grip on my shoulders tightened, just slightly. "I learned something that day," he said, his voice hard. "Love is conditional. Family is temporary. The only thing in this world that is real, the only thing that won't leave you, is control. The only thing you can trust is what you can build, what you can buy, and what you can hold." He looked at me then, his gray eyes searching mine. "I spent my whole life building walls, and then you walk in, soaked, exhausted, and call me dude. And you didn't want anything, you just were. You were the first real thing I'd felt in a decade. The space between us wasn't just space anymore. It was a live wire. It was every secret, every fear. I was so tired of being scared. I let the blanket drop from my shoulders. It pooled around my feet on the floor. "Lucien," I breathed. My hands came up, not to his chest, but to the collar of his shirt. I gripped the fabric in my fists. He went absolutely still. His hands were still on my shoulders, his gaze fixed on mine. This wasn't the print shop. There was no desk, no hot cocoa. There was just this. "Mara," he said. His voice was a warning, a question. I didn't answer with words. I pulled, just a little. His eyes, his dark, controlled, unreadable eyes, asked me one last time. I nodded, just once. It wasn't slow, it wasn't gentle. It was like a dam breaking. His mouth was on mine, and it wasn't the curious, testing kiss from the print shop. This was a claiming. It was a drowning. It was all the control he'd spent a lifetime building just shattering. My hands left his collar and tangled in his hair, pulling his face closer to mine, deepening the kiss. He made a low, guttural sound in his throat. His arms wrapped around me, one hand splayed wide across my back, the other sliding down to my waist, lifting me, pulling me against him until there was no air, no space, no thought left between us. I could feel the thrum of his heart against my ribs, or maybe it was mine. I couldn't tell. He tasted like coffee and steel and the faint, clean scent of mint that was just him. His lips were firm, demanding, and I met his pressure with my own. This wasn't a surrender. It was a collision. He broke the kiss only to move, his mouth tracing a line of fire along my jaw to the sensitive spot just beneath my ear. I gasped, my head falling back, my fingers tightening in his hair. "Lucien?" I breathed. It was half prayer, half surrender. We stumbled, never breaking contact. My knees hit the edge of the cot, and we fell. We landed on the thin mattress, him half over me, his weight braced on his arms, his face buried in my neck, his breath was hot on my skin. "You're sure?" he whispered, his voice thick, ragged. I didn't answer. I just arched my back, a silent, desperate yes. That was all he needed. His mouth found mine again, and the world just dissolved. There was only the heat of his hands, the heat of his skin, the heat spreading from my chest down to my fingers and toes. I felt my fingers uncurl from his hair, and my hands laced with his. Our grips crushing, palm to palm. The rain hammered on the roof, a wild, frantic drumming that matched the beat of my own blood. There was just the sound of the storm, the scent of wood smoke, and the impossible, undeniable truth of him. Finally, here. When I opened my eyes, the room was gray with the first hint of dawn. The rain had softened to a drizzle. I was tucked against his side, my head on his chest. His arms were locked around me, holding me even in sleep. I could hear his heartbeat, slow and steady under my ear, thump, thump, thump. It was the only sound in the world. I lay there for, I don't know, an hour, just breathing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't cold, I wasn't scared. His eyes opened, and he was looking at me. He didn't seem surprised to find me there. He just looked. "Hey," I whispered. "Hey," he rumbled. He tightened his hold, pulling me closer. He kissed the top of my head. "I won't let them touch you. Mara, Bellafiore, Cho, any of them. I won't let them near you." I believed him. "When this is done," he said, his voice still thick with sleep. "We're going, you and me, we're going to Atlantic City, and you're going to eat funnel cake until you're sick, and I'm going to watch." I laughed, a real soft laugh, and buried my face in his chest. That's the most ridiculous, perfect thing anyone has ever said to me. "I'm a ridiculous, perfect man," he said. "Don't push it, dude." He laughed, the sound vibrating through me. He reached over, not to his pants, but to his suit jacket, which was slung over the chair. He fumbled in the inside pocket. He pulled out a small, heavy piece of polished silver, a tie clip, simple, elegant, with 2 letters engraved in a sharp, clean font La T. I don't wear a tie much," I said. "I know." He sat up, pulling me with him. He took my left foot and gently picked it up. He was looking at my old, worn-out sneakers. "Mara," he said, his voice pained, "we are getting you new shoes." "Shut up," I said, blushing. "What are you doing?" He took the silver clip and, with surprising care, slid it onto the lace of my left sneaker, right near the toe, and he clicked it shut. It looked insane, a piece of pure, expensive silver on a 5-year-old, battered shoe. "There," he said, satisfied. "A sign, so you remember you're with me." I was speechless. It was the weirdest, most intimate, most Lucian thing he could have possibly done. We were just sitting there, the quiet of the morning wrapped around us, when I saw it. In the round window, just a tiny flicker, a pinprick of red light. My heart stopped. It was on the roof of the building across the canal, aimed right at us. A camera, a mini-cam. They were watching. They had been watching. "I see you. Mara." "Lucien?" My voice was a croak. He saw the direction of my gaze. He was off the bed in an instant, pulling me down, away from the window. "What?" "The message," I said, the words spilling out. "After the IP trace, from Harrison. I didn't tell you. The server, it sent me a message back. It said, 'I see you.' And it spelled my name with an H. I waited for him to yell, to be furious that I had kept a secret. He didn't. He just stood there for a long, cold second, and then his arms were around me, pulling me against him so hard it almost hurt. He wasn't angry. He was terrified. He crushed me against his chest, his hand buried in my hair, holding my head against him. "It's okay," he whispered, but his voice was rough. "It's okay, and he was just trying to scare you." "It worked," I mumbled into his shirt. "Not anymore." He pulled back, his hands on my face. "From now until this is over, no more secrets. Not from you, not from me. 0 hour. We move together. You understand?" "I understand," I said. And I smiled, a real, actual smile. The terror was still there, but it wasn't just my terror anymore. It was ours. For the first time in my life, I wasn't alone. "Buzz, buzz." The sound was loud in the small room. It was his burner phone, on the table. He snatched it up. "Read the text." His face went hard. The man who ate funnel cake was gone. The boss was back. "Silas," he said, "the rats are leaving the nest. Bellafiore is on the move. He's heading to Harrison. It's on schedule." He started pulling on his shoes. I grabbed mine, the silver clip heavy on the lace. This was it. He stopped at the door, his hand on the knob. He looked at me, his eyes all steel. "Don't make me choose, Mara," he said, his voice flat. "Between you and the plan." I finished tying my shoe and stood up to face him. "Then don't make me choose," I said, "between you and what's right." This was 0 hour. The night was cold and sharp, and the inside of the surveillance van smelled like ozone and stale coffee. I was alone, but I was the center of the entire board. My setup was impressive, something Lucien's tech team had put together in 6 hours. I had 3 screens. One showed a satellite map of Harrison, with 2 sets of blinking dots. The red dots were Agent Merrill Cho's FFIU team, a tight, professional net closing in on the old driving school. The green dots were Lucien's, but they weren't at Harrison. They were 2 blocks away, holding... "Lucien, what's your play?" I whispered into the small mic attached to my collar. My voice went to a secure, private channel. His voice came back in my earpiece, calm and smooth. "Cho wants a show. We're going to give her one." On my second screen, a grainy night vision feed from a street cam. I saw him, a figure in a dark hoodie and a courier bag, moving fast. He ran from the alley where Lucien's green dots were clustered and made a beeline for the side door of the driving school. "Who is that?" I asked. "Bait," Lucien said. "A deep-cover courier. He's paid, he's clean, and he has a lawyer on retainer. He's going in. He'll be surprised by the raid, and Cho will get her man a man who just happens to look a lot like a Caravello operative in the dark." It was a setup. He was feeding Cho a fake. My main screen was a stream of code. The trace was active. Bellafiore's server was live, and it was terrified. It was trying to scrub itself. But the watermark I'd planted was keeping the connection alive, feeding me data. "FFIU is breaching," I said, watching the red dots swarm the building, west and south entrances. Good, Lucian's voice said. Let her have her theater. Now, Silas, are you in position? At the door, Silas's voice rumbled on a different channel. X-row, I whispered, my heart hammering. X-row, Lucien confirmed. Bellafiore pulled all his muscle to Harrison to protect the server. He left the vault empty. We're not stealing data. Mara, you already have that. We're stealing his money. The reverse heist. While Cho was chasing a ghost at Harrison, Silas was at X-row, walking in the front door with a neutral team of loaders, guys who weren't on anyone's payroll to physically remove Bellafiore's cold storage hard drives, the backups, the financial ledgers, the real keys to maritime Aegis capital. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. My screen of code flickered. Lucien, he's scrubbing. The server's fighting me. A high-pitched whine filled my ears. The lights on my rig didn't just flicker. They popped. The screens went black. The feed from Lucien died. The whole van went dark, plunged into a sudden, shocking silence. An EMP, a mini-pulse. Bellafiore hadn't just relied on his thugs. He had a counter-move. He'd fried the entire block. My high-tech nerve center was a smoking pile of plastic. I was blind. I didn't panic. My hands were shaking, but I moved. I ripped the useless headset off and kicked the dead rig away. From under the passenger seat, I pulled a hard-shell case. My backup, battery-powered, old school. I snapped it open, a handheld tracker and a small, hardened laptop. I jammed Kai's red USB drive into the port. This wasn't about the server anymore. The server was gone. This was about the logs, all his history, all his crimes, right here in my hand. The screen lit up. The data was there. Safe. My burner phone, Cho's phone, lit up. A text. Raid a bust. Targets fled. Server wiped. Just a decoy. Your deal is looking thin. She'd missed. Lucian's plan had worked. She'd gotten the courier, a few scared techs, and an empty smoking room. She'd missed Lucien, and she'd missed Bellafiore. She was empty-handed. I let out a breath. We'd done it, My personal phone rang, the one I'd turned off in the attic, the one I'd just turned back on. A blocked number? My blood turned to ice. I answered it. Hello? Mara. The voice was cold, calm, and had a faint accent I couldn't place. With an H. We're so glad you're paying attention. Who is this? Listen, Mo, the voice said. I heard a sound, a small, wheezing cough. My stomach evaporated. I knew that sound. Eli, I screamed. Is that Eli? Put him on. We have the boy, the man said, his voice bored. He's fine, for now, but this room is dusty. His asthma seems to be acting up. A picture came through on my phone. Eli, and he was in a wooden chair, in a dark, concrete room. His hands were tied. He wasn't gagged, but his face was pale, his eyes wide with a terror that ripped my heart out of my chest. He wasn't being hurt. He was just there. A piece of leverage, a small, 13-year-old boy. You have something of ours, the man said. The red drive from the coder. Kai Kwan's parting gift. You will delete it. All of it. No, You have 30 minutes, the voice snapped, all boredom gone. If you call Caravello, if your silver-clipped shoe takes one step toward his people, if you call anyone, this dusty room gets a lot more difficult to breathe in. We know all about his triggers. 30 minutes. Then we call you back. The line went dead. I was alone, in a dark van. 30 minutes. I couldn't call Lucien. I'd heard him. Don't make me choose between you and the plan. This wasn't the plan. This was my life. This was Eli. If I called Lucien, he'd bring his army. Men would fight, and Eli would be in the middle. A tiny, fragile piece of glass in a fistfight. No, this was my choice. Me and what's right. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. I plugged my laptop into the handheld's battery pack. I'm not just a waitress. I'm a fast learner. I didn't delete the drive. I opened a VPN. I bounced my signal. Newark to Berlin. Berlin to Seoul. Seoul to Rio. I looked like a ghost. And I cloned the drive. The file was massive. Years of logs, years of Bellafiore's life. The progress bar on the screen was the slowest moving thing I had ever seen. 10%, 20%. Come on, come on. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. Dusty. God, he was choking. 70%, the phone rang again. Blocked. I ignored it. Come on. 99%, clone complete. I ripped the red drive out. I plugged in a blank one. I copied the clone. Then I took the red drive, the original, and I ran a full 3-pass security wipe. I didn't just delete it, I destroyed it. The phone rang again. I answered. It's done, I said, my voice hoarse. It's gone. We'll see, the voice said. Wait, I said. Before you call back, I have to know he's okay. Let me talk to him. Silence, then a fumbling sound. Mara Eli's voice. It was thin, terrified. Mara, I'm scared. It's cold. I know, buddy, I know, I said, tears streaming down my face. It's okay. You're going to be okay. I'm coming to get you. I promise. Just breathe slow. Okay, like we practiced. In for 4, out for 6. Can you do that? I think so. Mara, hurry. The phone was snatched away. The old Weequahic Park cold storage depot. The man said, Now, come alone. We'll be watching. He hung up. I grabbed the clone drive. I still had 10 minutes. I did one more thing. I ran a hash algorithm on the data, a unique 25-digit digital fingerprint. I copied the hash string. Then I opened a blank email, a new anonymous account. I addressed it to a reporter at the East Bay Sentinel, the one who had been covering the port. Subject Bellafiore's books. Body, this is the fingerprint. The data is real. Find it. I set it to send in 1 hour. Insurance. I grabbed my jacket and a black beanie, pulling it down low over my ears. Inside the cuff, I jammed the tiny device Lucien had given me, the heart rate monitor. He'd said to press it if I was in trouble. I stepped out of the van. The cold night air hit me. I was alone. I started walking, my sneakers silent on the pavement, the silver LC clip on my left shoe caught the weak yellow light from a distant street lamp. And I stopped. A sign. So you remember, you're with me. It wasn't a sign. It wasn't jewelry. It was a tracker, a tiny micro GPS hidden in plain sight. He knew. He knew I'd never choose the plan over Eli. He knew I'd break the no secrets rule to protect my brother. He wasn't making me choose. He was letting me think I was alone. He was letting me walk into the fire, but he was holding a string. He was watching. The cold storage depot was a rotting concrete box near the highway. It smelled of rust and decay. I pushed the heavy door open. One light hung from the ceiling, the same as the print shop. He was there. Santo Bellafiore. He wasn't the monster I'd imagined. He was older, in his 60s, with a kind face, white hair, and a gentle smile. He looked like someone's grandfather. He was wearing a beautiful cashmere coat. Mara, he said, his voice soft, like a disappointed father. You've been a profound complication. Eli, I said, my voice raw. He's here. Bellafiore gestured to the corner. Eli, and he was tied to a chair, but the ropes were loose. His puffer was on the floor, just out of his reach. He was terrified, but he'd stopped crying. Mara? Let him go, I said. In a moment, Bellafiore said, holding out a soft, manicured hand. The drive. I wiped it, I said. His smile didn't waver. I know, my tech team watched you do it. A very thorough wipe. He motioned. A thug stepped forward, holding a laptop. But you're too smart to destroy it. You cloned it. The clone. Please. We'll wipe it here. He'd been playing me. He'd wanted me to clone it, so he could get the copy. No, I said. Bellafiore's smile faded. The data isn't on a drive. I bluffed, my mind racing, building the lie. It's in the cloud. I wiped the drive because you told me to. The data is encrypted, and I have the key. Bellafiore stared at me. The kindness was gone. His eyes were cold, dead. The key. Then. It's a 2-part key, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. A dead man's switch. I'll give you the first half. The second half, it's tied to my phone's GPS. It only becomes available, it only unlocks when my phone pings a cell tower at least 5 miles away from here. You want the data, you have to let us go. You drive us. I give you the first key, and when we're safe, the second key unlocks itself." He studied me. I could see him calculating. "Get in the car," he said. We were outside, a convoy of 3 black vans, Bellafiore, the thug, Eli, and me in the middle van. We pulled out of the depot onto the dark, empty street. And the world exploded. Whump, whump, whump! Blue and red lights, sirens. 2 FFIU vans swerved in front of us, blocking the road. Merrill Cho, in a tack vest, was out, gun drawn. FFIU hands in the air. Bellafiore's driver slammed on the brakes, throwing us forward. "A setup," Bellafiore hissed, looking at me. "It wasn't me," I yelled. A black sedan screeched to a halt behind Cho's vans, blocking her path. The door opened. Director Calder, the man Lucien had gotten suspended. He wasn't suspended, he was here. And he wasn't looking at us. He was looking at Cho. "Agent Cho," Calder said, his voice amplified. "You're interfering with a secured MPAI transport. Stand down now." It was a trap. Not for us. For Cho. Bellafiore owned Calder, and Calder was here to give his boss an escape route. Chaos, horns, shouting. Cho was screaming at Calder. Calder was screaming back. My beanie, my earpiece. It buzzed. Lucien's voice. Not a call. Just in my ear. Low, calm, cutting through the panic like a diamond. "Trust me. Tell your driver. Turn left at the 3rd light. Now." I looked at Eli. I looked at Bellafiore. The night had just split wide open. My earpiece buzzed. Lucien's voice. Calm. A lifeline in a sea of chaos. "Trust me. Tell your driver. Turn left at the 3rd light. Now." I looked at Bellafiore. His face was a mask of confusion, his eyes darting between Cho's FFIU vans and Calder's MPAI blockade. He was trapped. I grabbed the driver's shoulder. "The 3rd light, turn left. Go now." The driver, a thug with a shaved head, looked at me, then at Bellafiore. "Boss." "She's lying," Bellafiore snarled. "They're both cops," I screamed. "They're playing you. That's the only way out. Left, left." The driver saw the logic. Cops in front, cops behind. He wasn't paid to get arrested. He stomped the gas, yanking the wheel hard left. The heavy van jumped the curb, its tires shrieking. It smashed through a chain-link fence with a sound like a gunshot. We were off-road, bouncing hard over gravel and broken pavement. The other 2 vans in Bellafiore's convoy followed us, a desperate, lurching procession. We were in an abandoned rail yard. Rusted tracks disappeared into the weeds. Old, graffiti-covered boxcars sat like sleeping, wounded animals. The driver slammed on the brakes. The way out, it was gone. With a deep metallic groan that shook the ground, a massive 40-foot shipping container slid out from the darkness. Moved by a forklift I couldn't see. It blocked the hole in the fence. We were in a box. "What is this?" Bellafiore roared, shoving me. He grabbed Eli, pulling my brother from the seat. "What did you do?" He kicked the van door open and dragged Eli out into the mud and gravel. His other men were piling out, guns drawn, spinning in circles, looking for a threat. "Santo." The voice cut through the night. Headlights flooded the yard, pinning us like rats in a trap. Lucien's truck. He stepped out, Silas at his side. They were calm. They were in control. "You," Bellafiore hissed. He pressed the barrel of his gun to Eli's temple. Eli whimpered, a small, terrified sound that ripped me in two. "You did this. You brought the feds." "I brought a solution," Lucian said, his voice echoing off the metal cars. "This is between you and me. Let the boy go." "He's my insurance," Bellafiore screamed, his kind father mask completely gone. He was a cornered snake, all venom. "No." Lucian held up a hand. "He's a child. This isn't your way, Santo. It was never your way." Then Lucien did the last thing I expected. He took off his heavy wool coat, the one he'd worn in the attic, and let it fall to the muddy ground. He stood in just his dark shirt, his hands held wide at his sides, palms open. "A trade," Lucien said. His eyes met mine, just for a second, and they were deadly serious. "Me, for him, your real prize." "No!" I screamed. I tried to run forward, but Silas's arm shot out, catching my chest. "Lucien, don't, he'll kill you." "He's already walking. This is the only way, Mara," Lucien said, his eyes never leaving Bellafiore. "This is the cost." Bellafiore's face twisted into a mask of pure, gloating triumph. "The prince, Lucien Caravello. After all these years, you, kneeling for a little rat from the Ironbound, but he was savoring it, eating it with a spoon. Yes, I'll take that trade." He shoved Eli forward, and my brother stumbled and fell to his knees. As Lucien walked forward, defenseless, into the center of the yard, a new, tiny sound came from my earpiece, a ping. My mic, the one I was still wearing, hidden in my beanie. It was live. Calder, his warning shot. The mic had registered the gunshot as an audio trigger. The email, the hash, the digital fingerprint of Bellafiore's entire life. It was gone, sent to the East Bay Sentinel. My insurance policy had just cashed itself in. My gaze snapped to Eli, and he was on the ground, shaking, paralyzed with fear. I didn't watch Lucien. I didn't watch Bellafiore. I ran to my brother. I dropped to my knees in the mud in front of him. "Eli, look at me. Look at me." His eyes were wide, unfocused. He couldn't catch his breath. That high-pitched wheezing sound was starting. No, I said, my voice low and fierce. I grabbed his face, forcing him to look at me. "You are okay. I am here. We are going to breathe, together, you and me, box breathing, like we practiced, ready." I was terrified. I was watching a monster prepare to execute the man I was with. But Eli came first. "Breathe in," I commanded. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, Eli. Good boy. Now out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good again. In. I kept my eyes locked on his. I blocked out the guns. I blocked out the men. There was only me and my brother and the rain and the sound of our breathing. I would not let this break him. Well, Bellafiore was saying, his voice oozing satisfaction as Lucien stopped, 10 feet away. "This is a beautiful moment." "Drop it, Santo." The voice was new. One of Bellafiore's own men, the quiet Asian man I'd seen in the van, Jiro Tanabe. He hadn't moved. He just raised his gun, and he was pointing it directly at Bellafiore's head. Jiro Bellafiore looked stunned. "What is this?" "Agent Cho sends her regards," Jiro said. "She doesn't like being played." The flip. Merrill had a man on the inside, too. Bellafiore's face collapsed. He'd been played by me, by Lucien, by the feds. He didn't surrender. He didn't rant. He lunged. Not at Jiro. Not at me. He launched himself at Lucien. It wasn't a firefight. Well, it was a brawl. Lucien met his charge, and the two men went down, crashing into the mud. It was horrific. It wasn't clean. It was just two men, one old, one young, trying to destroy each other. Lucien was a businessman, but he fought with a cold, contained precision. Bellafiore was an old man, but he was fueled by a lifetime of hate. They rolled, fists swinging, grunting, the sound of their impacts sickening and wet. Jiro held his gun on Bellafiore's other men, who had their hands up. Silas was a mountain, guarding the entrance. It was a standoff. Sirens, getting closer, fast. But the sound wasn't coming from X-Row, it was coming from the intersection. Merrill Cho, she wasn't at X-Row, she was coming here. "Lucien," I screamed. "She's coming, she played me. She's coming for both of you." Bellafiore heard it. He landed a vicious blow to Lucien's side. He knew. Merrill wanted the whole organization, both snakes, in the same pit. "Merrill," I screamed into the mic, my voice shredding. "You're being played. The data isn't at X-Row. It's not here. It's in Edison, the old scrapyard, sub-level vault BB, as in Bellafiore. I was giving it all away, my last card. "You want him," I shrieked, pointing at the brawl. "You want the data, you have to choose. Go get the data, go." There was a crackle on Bellafiore's radio, still clipped to his belt, a cold, female voice, Meryl's voice. "All units, divert now," she said. "Change of target, Edison, scrapyard, Vault B, move." Bellafiore stopped, and he was on top of Lucien, his fist raised. He'd heard it. He heard his escape plan, his retirement fund, his entire hidden empire, get called out over an open channel. He'd lost. He stood up, but he didn't do it alone. He hauled Lucien up with him, locking a thick forearm around Lucien's throat, pulling him back, using him as a human shield. "You," he hissed at me, his face a mask of purple rage. "You little bitch, you!" He had nothing left. He was going to kill Lucien, just because he could. "Let him go," I said. I stood up, pushing Eli behind me. "It's over." "It's over when I say it is," he screamed, his arm tightening. Lucien's face was pale, his hands clawing at Bellafiore's arm. "Okay," I said, walking toward him. My hands were up, palm out. "You're right, it's just us now. No more feds, no more cops, just us." I was 5 feet away, then 4. "You took everything," he spat. "I know," I said. He was watching my face. He was watching my hands. He made his mistake. He shifted his grip, just for a second, to point at me. "You." His wrist. I moved. All the nights of exhaustion, all the fear, all the training, it came in one smooth, violent motion. I grabbed his wrist with my left hand, his elbow with my right. I didn't try to punch him. I just dropped my center of gravity, twisted my body, and pulled. A sound I will never forget, a wet, sharp pop. Bellafiore screamed, a high, thin, bubbling sound. His arm was broken, useless. He stumbled back, clutching the ruined limb. Lucien was free. He fell to his knees, gasping, his throat bruised. The yard exploded in red and blue light. FFIU vans, Meryl Cho. They were here, but they weren't the first. A white news van, East Bay Sentinel on the side, was already there, its high beams flooding the scene. A reporter was talking into a camera, live. The hash, the gunshot, it had led them right here. Meryl Cho walked past me, her face like stone, her gun aimed at Bellafiore, who was weeping on the ground. "Santo Bellafiore," she said, her voice dead. "You're under arrest." Her team was on him, zip ties cinching. I didn't watch. I ran back to Eli. Silas was already there. He'd cut the ropes. Mara, Eli launched himself at me, his small arms wrapping around my neck so tightly I could barely breathe. I fell back, holding him, my face buried in his hair. "I got you," I sobbed. "I got you. It's okay. I got you." I looked up. At the edge of the yard, by the container, Calder was standing there, his face a mask of horror. He saw Bellafiore in cuffs. He saw Cho. He saw the news van. He turned to run. "Director Calder," the reporter shouted, swinging the camera. "Is it true you are involved in the Bellafiore rackets, Director?" The spotlight hit him. He was caught. He just stopped and put his hands on his head. It was over. I was still on the ground, holding my brother. Ambulances were rolling in. The noise was deafening. Lucien walked over, and he was covered in mud. His lip was split, and a dark bruise was already forming on his jaw. He was breathing hard. He looked at me, at Eli, his face unreadable. He knelt, right there in the mud, in front of us. "You chose what's right," he said, his voice a rough rasp. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. "You also," he continued, his gaze hardening just a fraction, "almost got your brother killed, and yourself. You went alone." "But I didn't," I whispered, my hand finding the small silver clip on my shoe. "You were there. You knew I would." He looked at the clip. A slow, tired smile touched his bruised mouth. The sirens were screaming. The sky over the port was turning a sick, pale gray. Dawn was breaking. The truth was out, but we were standing in the middle of the wreckage, and for the first time, the floodlights were on both of us. The fallout was immediate, and it was loud. The East Bay Sentinel had a field day. The digital hash I'd sent them, triggered by Calder's gunshot, was their key. It was the digital fingerprint for the clone data. When Agent Cho's FFIU team hit the Edison scrapyard, my last-second gamble, they found the servers. They found the data. The hash proved it was real. And the Sentinel had the exclusive Bellafiore's empire. Maritime Aegis Capital was a house of cards that collapsed in an afternoon. Calder was indicted, his face a mask of sweaty, pathetic terror on the front page. The MPAI was gutted and rebuilt from the ground up. Meryl Cho held a press conference. She was a hero. She dismantled the largest corruption ring in the port's history, and she kept her word. My name was never mentioned. Eli's name was never mentioned. We were ghosts. Kai Kwan and his family were quietly relocated, their assistants buried under a mountain of procedural paperwork. And the logs, the ones Kai had given me, were used to grant immunity to nearly 200 port workers' drivers, clerks, mechanics who had been trapped in Bellafiore's system. They were just people trying to survive, like I had been. The storm passed, but one question remained. The Sentinel asked it every day, in op-eds and interviews. Who is Lucian Caravello? He wasn't arrested. He wasn't indicted. He was a witness. A concerned businessman who had been cooperating with the FFIU for months to root out corruption in his own company. He was the man who had lost millions to Bellafiore's theft. He was, on paper, a victim. But the press smelled the gray. They knew he was more. They dug into his father's history. They painted him as a new kind of boss, a high-stakes corporate shark who fought his wars in boardrooms and back alleys. They didn't know if he was a white knight or just the snake who had won. He gave them an answer a week later. He sold Raven Dock Logistics, the entire gray part of his operation. He sold it to a clean, publicly traded international shipping conglomerate, and he did it for a price that was, according to the news, shockingly fair. He cut the limb off. He kept his grandfather's company, the original, legitimate holdings, and he announced he was pouring tens of millions into new, transparent ventures. He was going clean, for real. And I had a choice to make. He had offered me an escape, the key in the print shop, the $10,000, the passport. I could have taken it. I could have taken Eli and just disappeared, become the Mara with an H and started over. I didn't. I stayed. I went back to my apartment, and on Monday morning, I didn't go to the diner. I went to the community college admissions office. I re-enrolled, logistics and supply chain compliance. I took out my own student loan. I was sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by financial aid forms, when he knocked. No driver, no Silas, just him. He was wearing jeans and a simple gray sweater. The bruise on his jaw had faded to a pale yellow. The cut on his lip was gone. He looked normal. "You didn't take the money," he said. He was looking at the loan forms. "I don't need the money," I said. "I'm not your project. Lucien, I'm not a bird with a broken wing you get to fix." "I never thought you were," he said quietly. He tore up the loan application. I bristled. "What are you doing? I told you." "This," he said, pulling a folded legal document from his back pocket, "is a contract from the new Caravello Holding Company. It's a scholarship grant, full tuition, plus books, plus a stipend, in exchange for 100 hours of internship per year and a non-exclusive first right of refusal on your employment when you graduate." It was clean. It was professional. It wasn't a gift. It was an investment. "My lawyer looked it over," he added. "She says it's ruthless." I looked at the signature line, and I laughed. "Okay, boss, you've got a deal." We went back to the Blue Comet. It felt weird. Sal, my old boss, saw us walk in and almost dropped a tray of plates. He sat us in the reserved booth, the one Lucien had claimed that first night. I ordered a club soda. Lucien ordered an espresso. It came in the thick white diner mug. He just looked at it. "This is where it started," I said. "It is," he said. He looked at me, and his gray eyes were completely clear. All the shadows were gone. I'm sorry, Mara. I paused. For what we won. I'm sorry, he said, his voice low and intense, that I put you in that cold storage depot. I'm sorry that I made you walk into that building, alone. I'm sorry that I forced you to have to make a choice between your brother and the world. But you were there, I whispered. The clip. You were listening. I was, he said. I knew you wouldn't call me. I knew you'd choose him, but I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have let it get that far. I was so focused on the plan I almost lost you. He hadn't apologized for the danger. He'd apologized for making me feel alone in it. He reached across the table. His hand didn't cover mine. He just held it out, palm up. I put my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine. I need you, Mara, he said, not as an auditor, not as a secret. I'm going to school, Lucien. I know, he said, but when you're not in class, I'm restructuring, I'm building a new company, and it needs a conscience. It needs a director of compliance, someone with absolute authority, veto power, someone who can walk into my office, look at a deal, and say, no, this isn't clean, and I will listen. I stared at him. You're offering me a job, as your boss. I'm offering you a partnership, he corrected. I pulled my hand away, my mind spinning, the power of that, the trust. On one condition, and I said, he raised an eyebrow. The scholarship, I want it expanded, a new fund for the port workers, the ones who want to go back to school, get a new certification. The guys who are stuck, I want you to give them a way out. A slow smile spread across his face. Okay, what do we call it? I thought about his story, the one that had unlocked everything. The Alicia Grant, I said, after your mother. His smile faded. He just looked at me, and I knew I'd said the right thing. He nodded once, his throat tight. The Alicia Grant, it's done. He leaned across the booth, and I leaned in. Right there, in the middle of the Blue Comet Diner, with Sal pretending not to watch, Lucien kissed me. It wasn't the desperate, drowning kiss from the attic. It was a promise. It was deep and slow, and it tasted like espresso and salt water. His hand came up to my face, his thumb on my cheek. My hands rested on his shoulders. I felt settled, grounded. Here, he whispered against my lips, his forehead resting on mine. Right now, you and me. You and me. I breathed. The diner windows were fogging up from our breath, blurring the world outside. Life found a new rhythm. Eli was okay. He was 13, and he'd seen something awful, but he was resilient. The first thing he did, he enrolled in a summer robotics camp. His asthma was under control. The bills were paid. He was just a kid, a normal kid. Silas stopped by the apartment one last time. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing track pants. I'm out. No, he said. Out. The boss, Lucien, he's gone corporate. I'm not a corporate guy. He flexed his massive hands. I'm opening a gym, over in Harrison, teaching self-defense, safety training for port workers. I smiled. The Alicia Grant. Maybe, he grunted. Your move. At the yard, the wrist lock. It was sloppy, but your form was good. You've got instinct. Thanks, I laughed. Good luck, Teacher Silas. He almost smiled. You too, boss. A month later, I was back at the diner, just for one last shift, for old time's sake. Sal had begged me. I was pouring coffee when a man at the counter, a new driver I didn't recognize, snapped his fingers. Hey, sweet thing, he called out. Another cup, and make it snappy. I froze. My blood ran cold. Before I could even speak, a shadow fell over the counter. Lucien, he'd been sitting in the back booth, reading the Sentinel. He just stood up. He walked over and stood behind me. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The new driver looked at Lucien. He saw the way Lucien was looking at him. He saw the quiet, absolute authority. He saw the ghost of the man who had torn the port apart and rebuilt it. The driver swallowed, hard. Or, the man stammered, his face pale. When you have a second, ma'am, please. Lucien just nodded. Once. and went back to his paper. The entire diner had gone silent, and then, slowly, the murmur of conversation started again. The law was understood. We went to Atlantic City that weekend. It was normal. It was the most wonderfully normal, boring, beautiful weekend of my life. The sky was blue. The air was cold and sharp. We rode the giant Ferris wheel. I held his hand, my knuckles white, and he laughed at me. We walked on the boards, and I ate funnel cake until I thought I was going to die. He bought me a second one. We stood on the beach, our shoes off, the cold sand between our toes. We weren't talking about manifests, or Bella Fiore, or the FFIU. We were talking about what to have for dinner, about a movie I wanted to see, about Eli's robotics project. That night, we stood on the balcony of the hotel room, overlooking the ocean. The waves were just a white shimmer in the darkness. He had his arms around my waist from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "It's perfect," I whispered. "It's quiet." "I like quiet," he murmured, his lips against my hair. I smiled, leaning my head back against him. "You know, this is all pretty great. You did good, dude." I felt the laugh rumble through his chest before I heard it. It was a deep, happy, unrestrained sound. He turned me in his arms to face him. His gray eyes were sparkling in the moonlight, all the shadows gone for good. He leaned in, his smile so close I could feel it. "My dude," he whispered and kissed me. "Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Please drop a comment below. Share your thoughts and let's connect. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more listeners.